There you go. The red dot is showing, so you are indeed recording.
It's on pause forever. Okay. Hi, this is Chef Rick Moonen, interviewing from my studio in Las Vegas. The name of my podcast is Ocean Raised. Here's where I get to dive deep into storytelling with the original gangsters of cuisine to find out where they started and what drives them. Today, I embrace with utter respect a man that has a long history of connecting with people through his heart and his actions. His perseverance and drive is what pushed him through a challenging and changing world. Chef Michel Nischan, chef, author, and food equity advocate, founder and board chair of Wholesome Wave, and founder and president of Wholesome Crave. Michel Nischan is a 4-time James Beard award-winning chef with over 35 years of leadership, advocating for a more healthful, sustainable food system. He is founder and president of Wholesome Crave, a food company selling responsibly sourced, plant-forward soups to large-scale feeding facilities. And a portion of the gross sales from Wholesome Crave produces benefits for Wholesome Wave, the nonprofit food equity organization for which Michel serves as founder and non-executive chairman. He's also co-founder of the James Beard Foundation Chefs Action Network, as well as founder and partner with the late actor Paul Newman of the former Dressing Room restaurant in Connecticut. Nishan, whose parents were farmers, began his career at age 19, cooking breakfast at a truck stop. He quickly realized that the ingredients coming in the back door of the truck stop fell far short of the farm fresh ingredients he had grown loving and began a lifelong career from Milwaukee to Memphis, New York, Mumbai, and beyond as a chef champion, the farm to table concept. Decades before it really had a name, he was just doing it. Nishan and his Wholesome Way partner, the late USDA Undersecretary Gus Schumacher, were instrumental in securing $100 million for Food Insecurity Nutrition Incentive, FINI. There's grants for the food equity field in the 2014 Federal Farm Bill, which was recently expanded to $250 million in the 2018 Farm Bill to become a permanent part of all future farm bills. That's the type of tenacity and connectiveness that Michel Nischan has created in his life. I just wanted to throw in a comment on it because this is just, it's beyond my comprehension how this guy is just so driven. He's the author of 3 cookbooks on healthful and sustainable food, numerous articles and op-eds, and is a respected thought leader for a good food movement. A lifetime Ashoka Fellow, he serves as director on the board of the Jacques Pepin Foundation. And just so the people, our listeners know, I interviewed Jacques Pepin not too long ago, and it's in our archives. So I highly encourage you to listen in on that one and learn more about a living legend. So just to be connected with Jacques Pepin is one of our closest bonds, I think, with myself and Chef Michel. Where was I? Okay, he's also he's with the let me see here. Jacques Pepin Foundation on the advisory boards of Chefs Collaborative, Modern Farmer, Good Food Media Network, and the Culinary Institute of America. The James Beard Foundation honored Nishan at their 2015 Humanitarian Year of Award. And he was awarded an honorary doctorate in humane letters from Post Universities with graduating class of 2019. His list of awards are way too numerous to even start. I mean, Michel Nischan did not enter into this industry with the idea of having a list of awards that you can't even mention them all and throw them in a room. He's driven by a true heart. And I want to welcome you, Chef, first and foremost. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. But also I want to hear more about the farm. What were you eating? What was it like? How many brothers and sisters? What were, and walk through your culinary background, because it's, I didn't mention anything about your culinary background. I mean, you started in Chicago, you went to Milwaukee. It's amazing. So welcome, and the floor is yours. This is your story.
Thanks, brother. It's so good to be with you. I wish we could, be together in person. I'm like one shot away from my immunity thing. I've got my second shot coming up on Sunday, man. And you're going to be one of the first people I come to see, man. Vegas, baby. Anyway, yeah. So thanks for the question. I had, when it was interesting to me because, both my parents came from farm families. So my dad was from Western Kentucky. My mom was from Southeastern Missouri in the little boot heel, right at the head of the Mississippi Delta. And, so most of my relatives they're just good South Central Midwestern hillbillies, my dad's family did kind of the Beverly Hillbillies. They sold in Kentucky when they saw the writing on the wall, the kind of ag policy changes to consolidate after World War II for national security reasons really forced the farmers out. So dad's family sold their farm, moved to Evanston. My grandfather on my mom's side was stubborn and tried to hold on to his farm. So it kept shrinking over time, but we would go down and work that farm because he couldn't afford farm workers anymore. So I'm one of four. I have two brothers and a sister, but my mom was one of 13. So we had like 5 cousins, and we were
What were
like
you raising
all,
or growing? What were you raising or growing on this
so
farm?
it was chickens, goats, pigs, and then a lot of root crops. So rutabaga, turnips, beets, sweet corn, and then there was a family vegetable plot. So the money crops were the chickens and the pigs. The goats were more for meat, and they'll eat anything and to keep the farm clean. And then the sweet corn and the roots were also kind of the money crop, for lack of a better term. And then we had like about a 2-acre family vegetable plot. So we go down and work the farm and hay and do dozens and dozens and dozens, fill bushel bags of sweet corn to get them to the various farm stands that my grandfather was selling through. Take care of the animals, tend the farm, do all that stuff. It's where I learned how to cook.
Was your mom a
I
good
learned how to
cook?
raise an animal, take the life of the animal, cure the animal, make it delicious, all that good jazz.
Was your mom a good cook?
She was amazing. She really taught me how. Most of the recipes that I love most, many of them that were featured at Dressing Room Restaurant, were my mother's recipes. She was brilliant. So she could butcher, she could cure, pickle, ferment, line folded. To her, it was just normal. So to me, it was kind of, I thought it was normal. I just assumed that pretty much everybody else knew about food and knew about farming somehow. I was a little bit naive. It was, what was interesting to me was right when I graduated, the year I graduated high school, I wasn't 18 yet. I was 17. And my older brother and I were told that we had to move out of the house because my parents fell on hard times, had to downsize. We had a younger brother and a younger sister. So me and Steve moved out. He hated cooking. He hated farming. And my mom's like, Michel, you're going to be okay because you can cook. At least you'll eat. Get a job in a restaurant. You get a meal a day and a paycheck. so that's when I got that job at the truck stop that you mentioned.
Yep.
It was so funny. It was my first cooking job ever, but I nailed it.
You did. But then how did you end up getting to Chicago? Right. So you worked at two great restaurants in Chicago, La Tour and Le Perroquet. I mean, those are amazing. Those are well known. I know them, so that's got to be well known.
So it started was I got the job at this truck stop, and the guy who owned the truck stop had a nephew helping him out, and they hired me with no documented experience because they were in the weeds, because they had this former Navy cook named Jim who was really horribly difficult. I mean, their biscuit was the cans of the Hormel chipped beef in the cornstarch thickened cream gravy thing. It wasn't even like biscuits and gravy. Very, very difficult work for. So the owner's nephew was up from helping him because the team had walked out. And I remember like my third day there, I'd never seen a breakfast griddle before. I went in, I'm like, what a marvelous invention. It's like this big surface, like
slab.
You cook your bacon, your sag, and it had this trough and you could grease so I'm like, why aren't we saving our bacon grease and making our biscuits and gravy. And Jim, the Navy cook's like, hey, you're going to make my job harder. You guys is like all curmudgeonly and stuff. So I came in one morning, like 45 minutes early, blanched off some bacon, blanched off some sausage, made the gravy, made my own biscuits. You know how easy biscuits are to make. It's really not that big of a deal.
4 ingredients.
You know, yeah, exactly. So I made the biscuits and gravy, and the servers were like flipping out. Wow, the truckers are freaking out. Real biscuits and gravy.
Now we're screwed.
Like, you're gonna get me fired. But this kid, this nephew of the owner, was working for a guy named Gene Sage in Chicago, who had a Sage's restaurant group. So he had a restaurant called Mon Petit. Sages, and they were opening a new restaurant in Arlington Heights, and said, you've got skills, you need to come with me and work in this new restaurant. It's $2 more an hour. I'm like, I'm in.
100%.
And, you know, within like 3 months, because I could break down a leg of veal, even though I had never seen a leg of veal. You know, it's the same thing as a hog leg, right? I could break it down faster than the Alsatian chef. So this guy's like, you need to be my sous chef. And I'm like, what's that? He's like, $3 more an hour. I'm like, cool. I'm a sous chef. You know? But it's, so I got in that network, and that same Alsatian chef, Travojevic, had a Gruyere Den who had broke his back in a skiing accident.
A grill cook.
A grill cook.
He's throwing fancy words at us, listeners.
Well, you know, it was I had to do that thing at the time because that's how everybody was talking. And I was the anomaly because I was like the white American kid who actually knew how to cook.
Right.
You know, I just, that's how I got into that network. And it was mind boggling for me because the thing that I dug was like the whole, the real intentional approach to stocks, but then how you make the reduction and you can mount it with butter. And this is the thing that like gave the chefs I was working with a headache. I'm like, well, if you can mount it with butter, why can't you mount it with bacon fat? Why can't you mount it with, you know, goose fat? Why can't you mount it with, and we can
shut up, kid. That's not how we do it. Just stick with the recipe.
Yeah, that's how I so from like breakfast cook to, you know, some of the best French restaurants in like no time at all. And it was just basically, it's like Jacques' whole thing. It's like, if you've got the skills, if you have the techniques, you know, if you have the understanding and you have the love of food, you can work in almost any environment where food exists.
Yeah, his biggest thing is just start cooking, and you can make all the adjustments you need along the way. You know, let's not overthink this whole thing, people. You know, I mean, that's the biggest takeaway from my interview with him was exactly that message. You know, tremendous. So you're in Chicago, you're working some cool restaurants. They recognize your skill level. You're digging it. You're getting some recognition. You're getting $5 more an hour than you started out with in a truck stop. You're doing really well now. All right. So you open a restaurant in Milwaukee, Fleur de Lis. You did that.
Yes.
So tell me how the transition of working in 2 French restaurants in Chicago to why Milwaukee? What brought you there? And tell me about Fleur de Lis a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, so I was I ended up working at the Park Hyatt in one of the stints. You know how it is. It's kind of like all the chefs know each other. Somebody goes on vacation, something happens, somebody leaves, somebody goes opens their own restaurant, and you'll borrow cooks from other places 100%. Sometimes. So I was on loan to Latour at the Park Hyatt before it was torn down and renovated. You know, and it's like the old original Latour, beautiful restaurant,
plush.
And you know, Wilfred Ladd, who was the chef there at the time, is like, wow, you got skills. You can, you know, you can be. I know you've been like a sous chef in these private restaurants, but you know, you could actually learn how to be a real manager, you know, if you come and work with Hyatt. So he got me a job. They were opening the Hyatt Regency Woodfield. I worked there for a Walt Wittgen, a Swiss guy. Worked there for about 3 months. Was the sous chef of the specialty dining room, and then I loved ice carving, so I started ice carving, and I love like ballotines and galantines and learned how to make chaud-froid and was doing like all the garde stuff and just coming in, you know how it would be. It's like you come in on your own time, you're off the clock, you
Oh,
do it,
100%.
you want to learn, you know, so I gained a lot of respect that way. But then I got approached by Chef Walter one day, who said, there's a friend of mine, Stephen Hall, the executive Chef Regency Milwaukee needs a garde manger.
Mm-hmm.
And you should really do that. You're really talented. Go up there, interview. I interviewed with a guy. I went there. Within 6 months, I became executive sous chef of the hotel because I was doing the garde manger, but also fixing the French restaurant because the guy who was running the La Rotisserie restaurant wasn't doing a really great job. It's like they had this amazing, beautiful French rotisserie. He would cook ducks in a deck oven, tie them onto the rotisserie, and have it just going, you know, with just the lights on and no heat, you know, just for show and stuff. And I'm like, you've got this amazing, wonderful thing. And it's just like, so when the guy went on vacation and I kind of like fixed everything. It was the same thing. It was like Jim the breakfast cook. The guy came back and like his head fell off and rolled down the kitchen floor and everything. And he threw this tantrum. And the chef said, you know what? I won't mention his name. He's like, you're coming down to the main kitchen. You're going to be the banquet chef. Michel's taking over La Rotisserie. And when I was up there, there was a guy living in the hotel who had come to Milwaukee that wanted to open a restaurant and noticed like an overnight change in the food in La Rotisserie. So he came back walked into the kitchen one day. I want to meet the guy who really knows how to cook the duck and who knows how to cook vegetables. So I met him. His name was Kent Markle. And he told me about this restaurant project. He wanted to find the lost fleur-de-lis restaurant by Paul Lapointe, otherwise known as Frenchie. Had opened in the 40s and closed in the 50s, and said, when I find this space, I want you to be my chef and partner. I was 22 years old, man.
And I get it.
You know, so I did it. You know, that's how I ended up there. You know, it's so funny, and it was literally within 4 years of scraping down and cleaning that griddle and making my own biscuits and gravy and pissing off Jim, the Navy guy. You know, so it's like it happened so fast. But again, it's like you, Rick. It's like it's in your blood. You know, what you can do with food and fish is like so beyond what other people. I think of it like music, right? It's like if it's in your blood, it's in your soul. You know, you can pick it up on your own. You can learn by ear. You know, you can become a virtuoso musician. You can be a billionaire.
But you play guitar, don't you? Yeah, you're a musician yourself.
Do.
So you have.
But it's a creative thing, I think.
Yeah,
right.
It's deep understanding of all that. Oh, I love music.
Yeah.
You know, it's always either in my head or I'm playing it on, you know, a device of some sort, because it's what we connect with. You know, the balance of a perfectly made song is the same balance of a perfectly made dish. You know, you just sweet, salty, and, you know, bitter. And
similarities in creative process are uncanny. It's so similar, but you know, the point is, you know, you can be like a billionaire and spend millions in music lessons and play a song from beginning to end, but you're not going to get a recital at Carnegie Hall, right? You're not that. No. You're not. It's like, you know, Yo-Yo Ma. I'm sure he took a couple of lessons somewhere down the line, but I don't think he really needed them.
Probably not. There you go. Right. It was a natural.
You know? So I just, you know, I lucked out. It happened to be, you know, something that I could do, and you get a paycheck and you get a couple of free meals a day if you worked right.
I remember you playing guitar you played guitar at the Dressing Room, your restaurant. And
yeah.
So I'm gonna kind of just briefly fast forward through. Then you wanted more of an education. You never went to culinary school, but here you are now. It's sat in your lap. You got, holy smokes! If I'm going to make a real serious career out of this, I better get some more, you know, fundamentals, so I have all the foundation to be successful. Yeah. So you went with you became the chef at Interstate Hotels Corp, and through that system got that education of, you know, different manners of became a better manager and around the understanding of all of the how to feed it in volume and do it correctly and all the wonderful things. And then you went to Connecticut and you opened up Mishmash. This is where I remember you got on my radar in my head at Mishmash. And it was an unbelievable gospel brunch. It was all about it, and that's you throwing a party in your restaurant in Connecticut, and that's unbelievable. But that's where you met Drew Nieperon, right? From the Myriad Restaurant Group. And Drew, I'm doing a podcast with Drew as well. So that'll be coming up, so you can people can understand Drew, Rick Moonen, how you doing? He's unbelievable, a tremendous person, because he just had such a photographic memory. He knew everyone. He had all the playing cards. He was the draft choice of the day. Okay, let's go. And he knows everybody's resume in the top of his head.
That's amazing. It's uncanny.
You and he came together, right? Was Mishmash a part of Drew, or was it dressing room?
No. So Mishmash was on my own, but we, I had the life-changing event things that happen, right? So Chris was diagnosed, my oldest son. He's 32, 31 now. Everyone's always having a birthday, man. So I'm always
it's okay. We forgive you.
He's 31.
Okay.
So anyway, I think anyway.
Don't let Chris hear this podcast.
When he was 5, he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, right? Mm-hmm. So, here I am doing like local, organic, sustainable, paying farmers in advance to grow food for me, because I understood the importance of crop insurance, and there was no local food supply chain, often going and picking up all my own food. But, I was also, backstroking in butter and using foie gras and, doing, glazed lamb shoulder with bacon roasted shallot demi-glace.
But that's your background. That's what you learned.
Yeah. Right. And I started doing the research, when Chris was diagnosed, and the thing that I learned that caught my attention was that what we would do with his food strategy would have more to do with the length and the quality of his life,
right, than
any other thing. So, at first I was encouraged. I'm like, wow, I got this. I'm a chef. I can figure this out. And it took all of 3 months to realize that I was feeding my customers things that I would no longer feed my family.
Right. No, I get it.
And how do you, if you care about people, how do you sleep at night? Right. So it was I had a real tough year. And then I bumped into Drew and I remember confiding in Michael Batterberry about it. And he wrote an article about it. Or had a conversation. Somehow Drew glommed onto my frustration. So it was the 95 Beard Awards. And I hear this mishmash, it's the first time, the only time I went to the Beard Awards. I had done a couple of beard dinners, wasn't nominated or anything, but I hear this mishmash, and it's Drew. And a couple of weeks before, when the Times food section used to be on, it used to be on Friday, then it went to Wednesday.
No, I think it was one or the other. It was Friday, then it went to Wednesday.
It was one or the other, right. But anyway, so we actually were on the cover of Times food section for our gospel brunch. And when you open to the inside page to finish it, there was the story on the opening of Nobu, right? So Drew's got that.
Yeah, he read your article for sure. You're right there.
And he's like, you and me, we got to get together, So I ended up going in and interviewing, and he's like, you need to come down here. You just need to work with me. He's like, look at me, I'm out of shape. I saw a doctor. Doctor told me I needed to really lose weight and change the way I eat. He was having health issues, around weight.
He used to run marathons when he was younger.
You own 100 restaurants within 4 square blocks of each other. You tend to eat a lot, But
exactly,
and Drew, he just loves food. So he's like, he had this vision. He's like, listen, it's you got your son, you've done this research, you do all this amazing stuff with local, organic, sustainable food with all these ingredients that are available now. There's got to be a way that we can do a restaurant where somebody can come, and no matter what their health issue is, unless they have an allergy, they can order anything off of the menu and be safe. So that was the idea. So I took the job as chef de cuisine at Tribeca Grill under the promise that Drew and I would work this concept out and do it. And we ended up doing it in the First W Hotel, and it was Heartbeat Restaurant.
That's right.
So it was restaurant of well-being, local, organic, sustainable, but no processed food of any kind. At the time, the science of the time, because we didn't have the science that said it's processed carbohydrates that make you fat. People assume that if you eat fat, you're going to get fat. If you eat cholesterol, you're going to get cholesterol. Now the science says otherwise, but at the time it didn't. So no butter, no cream, no flour, no sugar. How do you get a good review, right? But we did. We got a great review in the Times, the New York Observer. And we got 0 stars in the New York Post and got accused of being the food police. So we were controversial. So we were busy, but that's how I ended up working with Drew.
Yeah, that makes total sense. You were way ahead of your time back then, though, with that whole thing. I remember that time frame. I think I was at Oceana. I'm guessing.
You were at Oceana. Yeah.
Yeah. And I knew your name through a mutual friend, Stephanie Crane. And she worked for me or with me. She was my publicist, and your name would come up because she thought you were the best thing. And I was like, this guy who I don't know him. And so I chose not to like you. It's a true story. It's a true story. He's one of those fluffy frou chefs with his.
Good to know.
He's a tree hugger. All this, right? So flash forward years later. I'm at Monterey Bay Aquarium at the, Cooking for Solutions. And I got up one morning because we're going on an outing. We're going, we're getting in buses and we're going to go see something, whatever. We went to some organic farm. And I got up early and I went to this, morning breakfast breakout session. Some people get up on stage and they give their presentations. It could be quite interesting. So I didn't have this on my radar, but I went in, I stumble in the back door, I get my coffee and I sit down at a table. I'm starting to take a sip of my coffee and you're introduced. And here you come up and I'm like, oh yeah, I know this guy. Yeah, whatever.
This is the guy I don't like.
You told your story. And I had such an epiphany, and I got goosebumps right now talking about it, of when you told your entire story and your mission and everything about you. I had such a feeling of what an idiot I've been, what an asshole. So many years have passed by that I didn't get to know you. I fell in love with you right there. And I told you that at the bus before we got on later on, and we've been the best of friends ever since. Yeah, and that was ego. That was my ego that got in the way. And I learned a life lesson from you, getting to know you and how you turn that around. And I don't know if you've ever really known that, but you changed my life, the way I approach.
No, I didn't know that.
Don't judge people.
You're giving me goosebumps.
No. And that, I can't make that stuff up,
I'm kind of pissed off at you because we could have had 4 more years of friendship together, man. No, I'm just kidding, man.
Duly noted. You're absolutely right. I deserve every bit of it. It's just.
No, I think. Yeah, I listen, man. I think this is the way that the universe works, and it plugs us into those who we need to meet. It really does. Because regardless, I think back, my experiences in Chicago and New York kitchens during that time. It was really. Just brutal environments. You had to
man. You swam with the sharks, is how I put it. In New York City, I went through the French restaurants, La Côte Basque, and Le Cirque, and I opened up I was the chef at Le Lavandou, a tiny place on Madison Avenue. Just got pounded every day for lunch. I got beat up, and I was the chef. It was just by title. It didn't.
But I think a lot of the responses and the just general suspicion, it's like this necessary defense mechanism that exists as a result of those environments, and those environments have changed. I mean, not that kitchens aren't still intense, but I think all of us have learned that as a culinary community. That all of us together I think of all of the the horrible events that like our country have been through, where it really is like the chefs in the restaurant community that have pulled us out of it first. I mean, think of 9/11 and all of the stuff that happened after 9/11, you know, with, you know, Drew and David Boulay making up and, you know, doing that whole thing with the Spirit of New York
That's
cruise
right.
ship.
They were arch
And
enemies.
cigarette boating the food back and forth and feeding 12,000, you know, rescue workers a day and stuff. And you know, I think our whole communities figured out over the last couple of decades how powerful we are when we come together as brothers and sisters and take a look at some of society's most perplexing problems and say, damn it, let's just do something about this, man.
Right.
It's like, you
Yeah,
know?
now we can transition a little bit in the conversation from your culinary background, an accomplished chef, well recognized for it on so many different levels. A lot of it because of the story that you brought along with it, because of your fortitude of your life's path, and that's just it's truth. It's, you know, it's something to be greatly admired. So you started Wholesome Wave so many years ago, and I watched you go through administrations that just pounded you down and it never stopped you. You created relationships, you know, and you just went forward. Tell me a little bit about that and more about Wholesome Crave, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So Wholesome Wave it's kind of like how Heartbeat was a response to Chris being diagnosed with diabetes. It's like, you get that crisis of conscience. Why I can't feed, you know, tens of thousands of people a year, something I wouldn't feed my family. The interesting thing about Heartbeat, because we were well reviewed, you know, it caught the attention of like Walt Willett, who's a, you know, professor of public health at the Chan School of Public Health, Harvard School of Public Health, Eric Shivian from the Center for Health and Global Environment out of Harvard Medical School. They're like, wow, a chef with a healthy restaurant that got a 3-star review.
Right.
Let's talk to that guy. You know, you know, he's somebody who can make healthy food taste good. So I started getting invited to these think tanks and learning about things, you know, talk about, you know, language barriers, you know, the social determinants of health, diet-related disease crisis or diet-related disease epidemic. You know, I'm like, man, you know, all of these like weird concepts, but it was, you know, in these, so my brain was like just jolted alive with the electricity of all of this new knowledge that was all of a sudden available to me from really smart people. And it was in one of these forums that I learned about, you know, the family of 4 that relies on food stamps. They run out in the middle of the month and they have $2 for all 4 people for dinner. That's 50 cents a person.
Yeah.
So there's no business plan for that. There's no business model. It's not a food truck. It's not a grocery store.
Before you go any further, just, you know, for people who are listening, the food insecurity reality of the United States of America, this country in which we live, give me a snapshot of that.
Well, it's pretty massive. We were allegedly making progress before COVID-19 happened. We had gone from, you know, close to 47 million Americans being food insecure to 43 million Americans being food insecure.
Right direction.
It's still 1/5 of the country. You know, it's too many people, and that doesn't include people that are off the radar that are making just a little bit too much to be eligible for SNAP benefits. So they're actually worse off because you can't get the food stamp benefit to put food on your table because you make a couple of extra $1,000. So you're actually better off if you're not making as much. So it's this horrible place for people to be. And then of course there's, you know, undocumented, et cetera. So right now we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 million Americans are food insecure right now with the pandemic and the pandemic environment. And one of the things that I think is important distinction, Rick, that I've been working on lately is to help people understand. And finally, like Tufts just wrote a paper on it. Thank you, Tufts. The difference between food insecurity and nutrition insecurity.
Right.
You know, you can, if you're food insecure, you lost your job, you have no income,
Mhm.
you know, you're making the decision not to pay rent or not to pay electric. You don't need heat because it's, you know, the springtime, so you're not going to pay your electric bill. Let them shut it off so you can get food, whatever. You finally get your food stamps. It's just enough money to get the basic staples. So things like ramen noodle, instant rice, breakfast cereal, condensed soup, you know, that's, you know, you can put 3 meals a day on the table, but
Yep.
it's generally like, you know, a macaroni and cheese meal, you know, pasta,
Nothing alive. Nothing alive.
nothing alive. You know, and again, you know, you run out for the average family of four that runs out of SNAP in the middle of the month, and they have $2 or $3 for dinner for all four people. A head of broccoli is $2 to $3. That's cheap. But are you just going to quarter broccoli and put it on the table and say, "Here's dinner"?
Mhm.
So an 8-pack of instant noodles is like $2.69, and a can of condensed soup at the dollar store is like, you know, 89 cents. You know, so that's your dinner tonight. No broccoli is going to hit the table. So that's nutrition insecurity, when you can't afford the types of food that can prevent you from getting type 2 diabetes, can keep you from getting obese because you're eating the soluble fibers and everything that you need to
Wrong
avoid,
things.
yeah, wrong things. And you know, you know, that it's you know, it's the curse and the blessing of COVID is that people have finally become aware
Yes.
that if you are overweight, obese, hypertensive, have heart disease, or you have type 2 diabetes, you are 5 times more likely to be hospitalized or die from COVID-19. So people are starting to understand now that it's no longer about personal choice,
Mm.
that it's a national security issue. If we don't, yeah, imagine being able to have a healthy population because we've got the food policies in place that allow anybody, no matter what their income is, to exercise their free right to choose to feed their family well and keep them well, have a pandemic and not have to shut the country down because everybody's healthy. You know, it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
why
But
can't we, why can't we think of that, right?
people are connecting much more, though. I mean, urban farming
Yeah.
has skyrocketed. People are, you know, making their own mothers to make bread, and everybody's getting more involved in the connecting to the realities of our world and our life. I've done everything I can during COVID to become independent, self-reliant. You know,
Yeah.
harvesting my own animals and using every piece of it, but doing it only myself. You know, and growing my garden in my backyard, et cetera. So that mentality is now that much closer, making your position, your voice, you know, if you haven't already, you're going to explode, you know.
Well, no, it's nice to finally be making sense. You know, it's kind of like, it's like, I love what it is. It's almost like that makes sense. I'm like, wow, I'm not used to hearing that.
Wow, man.
Damn, you're crazy, man.
Thank you very much. Wow. So,
Yeah.
Wholesome Crave, you started that. That's an interesting
Yeah.
concept.
So,
Let me
well, you
wrap
know,
my head around it.
yeah. So it's interesting, you know, when we got the food insecurity nutrition incentive program into the 2014 Farm Bill,
Mhm.
that two things kind of like happened at once, right? We knew we were going to have this success, that we were going to get this $100 million pilot into the Farm Bill. So we knew that Wholesome Wave was going to kind of blow up, that there was going to be a lot of demand
Remember
for
that.
our work. Paul had passed away in 2008. Our lease was up December 31st, 2013. So, you know, it was a couple of advents. I was doing Wholesome Wave and dressing room. There was a bunch of pressure because there are a whole bunch of people who want to invest in multiple dressing rooms.
Right.
But I was really into Wholesome Wave. So I kept turning down, you know, these deals to kind of expand the restaurant empire thing,
Yeah.
really throwing more shoulder into Wholesome Wave. And when the lease was up, I just decided to make the switch, you know, because I felt I'd really have to put 100% of everything into it if we were going to scale. And then we spent about a year doing a strategic plan. And the strategic planner said to me, so, you got out of the food business. During the strategic plan, when we looked at the amount of money that it would take and the amount of like innovation, like technology innovation, things that could allow millions of people to take advantage of nutrition incentives, fruit and vegetable, doubling their food stamps for fruits and vegetables, or going to a doctor's office and someone saying, you're heading towards diet-related disease. Here's a prescription that you can redeem for the fruits and vegetables you need to avoid the disease.
Wow.
That's our vision. It would literally take hundreds of millions of dollars. So that wasn't going to come from philanthropy. So this strategic planning guy, he's kind of like me and you. He reminds me of someone from our business. He is a real straight shooter. And he's like, so genius, you got out of the food business. Why? He's like, you're waking up every morning and going out and asking people for money, to do this work. He's like, I don't know if you ever heard of this guy, Paul Newman. Of course he knew Paul was my former partner. He's like, he had this company, Newman's Own. They sold stuff and they gave money away. They give away $30 million a year. And I'm like, I could have had a V8, But I just, so that had happened. And then Mark Rothbaum, I think, did you meet Mark Rothbaum, Willie Nelson's manager? So Mark and I have been friends for years. He was at the Dalai Lama dinner, and we became friends with Willie and his wife Annie over time. And Mark called me one day. He's like, Willie knows how to make some chili. Make some chili. I want to send it to him. Some guy who made his favorite Texas beef chili had passed away, lived in like Marble Falls, Texas or something. Willie was in the hunt for like a real Texas beef chili. So Lori and I go to Whole Foods, buy all the ingredients. I make it, I freeze it, put it in Ziploc bags, FedEx it to Willie and Annie, and just like, hey, listen, guys, I'm really busy with Wholesome Wave. I'll make you all you want, but you got to give me like, a couple of weeks notice, right? So they call back and they're like, we want to do this chili. We'll go into grocery stores and we'll, some of the money can go to Wholesome Wave. Some of the money can go to Farm Aid. So it was exciting and it kind of accelerated my thinking. But when I did the research, the research really basically said that, the aisles of the grocery store are littered with failed celebrity food brands, right? And if it's just going to be chili, there's Newman's Own, right? There's Bob's Red Mill, but then it's, and Bob wasn't even really a celebrity. So it just, just the amount of money that you have to put into it.
I think packaging was important for Red Mill.
Yeah.
It felt like you were getting it from the farm.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's just that whole nightmare of it. So when I reported back to those guys and said, I just really, not sure it's the way to go. But it was during that diligence that I had spoken with Fidel Bauchio, who from the CEO of Bon Appetit Management.
That's right.
I had talked, Mike McGrath, who's now with me at Wholesome Crave at the time, was the CEO of Newman's Own. So spoke to a bunch of people, and Fidel and Ed Brown are like, Michel, soup and scaled food service, especially what you do with like plant-based, all the stuff you did. Because at Heartbeat Restaurant, Rick, I don't know if you knew this, but half the menu was and half of that was vegan, because I knew I would get vegetarians and vegans if I was doing a restaurant of well-being. So I was good at that part of it, right? So like, if you can do plant-based soup with your cause in this scaled food service environment, it's like student unions are giving college food service food service directors all kinds of crap because they're not buying locally. It's not good food. It's not healthy. It's, they want better food, right? So I did the research. There was a big unmet demand gap. So we decided to go to do plant-based soup. So we launched with 8 products, 2019. Fidel introduced us to Google Mountain View, the 47,000, now 50,000+ Googlers in Mountain View, California. They picked us up in March 2019. By November 2019, we were their preferred vegan soup provider. Nice. Just getting ready to go into many other Googles, and then in New York City, Morgan Stanley, UBS, Jefferies, BTIG. Google, New York City, et cetera, Massachusetts, Chicago, and COVID hit. You know, I think it was like March 15th or 16th or something. We're with Thomas McQuillan at Baldor, and he's like, "Hey, Mish, you know, this is our new warehouse. This is where your soups are going to be and all that stuff." And then, you know, like 5 days later, the shutdown. So we're in a holding pattern at the moment, but it's cool because, you know, everyone's starting to wake back up, and we're having all the conversations with our customers, and they're going to start buying again and stuff like that. But
the concept is sensational. Now, do you have a commissary, or is there a central place where these are produced and shipped from?
No, we work with a co-packer, Blount Fine Foods. They have a facility in Fall River, Massachusetts, McKinney Tech in Portland, Oregon, and they're fantastic. They do all the Jasper White stuff, you know, all the legal seafoods, and
I interviewed him.
Panera.
I did a podcast with Jasper as well. He was terrific.
Yeah, he's awesome, man. I love him. Miss him. But anyway, so we work with them, and we did the pivot to e-commerce because so many people are, so we figure we'd give it a shot. So, you know, you can actually order it. Rick, wholesomecrave.com, you know,
I'll look it up.
Go in and check it out. So we're doing
good soup.
Yeah, there you go. We're doing the e-commerce thing, man. So we're, you know, when we come out of it, we'll be in 2 business channels. You know, we'll be doing e-commerce and still the scaled food service thing. But it's set up like Newman's Own. What a lot of people don't know about Newman's Own is you have the foundation that owns the intellectual property to the name Newman's Own, and the food company is a corporation that sells the food and pays a tax-free royalty off the top, because then it maximizes the donation instead of have the EBITDA line taxes and then give the money away. So we're maximizing our give back.
That's fantastic.
Well, so there's Wholesome Wave and Wholesome Crave.
Yeah, man. Good for you. Wishing you all the best, and anything, you know, we can do as a hospitality industry to support you. We want to be the wave behind the wave, you know. And one of the top bucket lists for me is to be able to, you, me, and Jacques Pepin get a chance to just cook some food together, have a glass of wine, and just, you know.
Oh, dude, you come out and visit us. We're doing our Petanque League again this year. So we have a Petanque League here in Connecticut. So so you know, Jacques.
For those who don't know what Petanque is, it's the French version of bocce ball, but it's an open field, so it's all unpredictable turns and twists. It's a lot of fun.
It's really awesome, but yeah, dude, I'll let you know when we're doing the one at our house, man.
They take it so serious. They take it so seriously, man. Oh my God.
They really do. Well, the French do.
You're sitting there with your Ricard, you know, in your hand, you know, a little pastis and water and ice. And I remember I was at a D'Artagnan event. They had the Petanque these guys were playing, and I walked up, and you have these days in your life, and I went up there and I just kicked their butts, and I didn't know what I was doing, and they were just they were so indignant about it. You know, it's insane. I'd like to shift our conversation a little bit because our sponsor is Forever Oceans, and I'd like to talk to you about health, seafood, and aquaculture.
Yep.
You know, because I know because it's been a single subject focus of mine for a large portion of my career, 25 years. You know, I've been to many seafood farms, and I've, you know, in the beginning, you had to really navigate through the realities of what was going on, and you know, because it was an exploding category, so they were doing things wrong, and they didn't have answers for everything. Oh my God, you know, I can imagine the board meeting, you know, these aquaculture companies just invested. You and I just invested $1 million each in this company, and we're sitting around saying, hey, what's the report on the fish? Well, they're all infected with sea lice, and you're like, oh, I didn't see that coming. So you're like, well, what do we got out there to get rid of the lice? And they're like, well, there's one product. It's called Slice. It kills all of the lice. The louse fall right off of them and die. Well, a louse is a crustacean. So not only did the, you know, Slice solve the problem, but it also created a bigger problem in the immediate environment. Those things weren't being taken into consideration. Big changes now, you know, and I've always tried to be a big supporter of it. Yeah, I love it. You know, let's see some good aquaculture. And you get these fish that were like, I'm not overly excited about this farm barramundi personally. You know, the reason being, I could cook it. It'd be great. You and I could cook it. We'd love it together. But you put it on your menu, and your cooks better know exactly how to cook it, because a little bit too long, it turns into it's terrible, right? So, you know, So here we are at a new precipice of aquaculture and understanding and connectivity with the environment and working within the environment, thinking things through like solutions more that are what would the environment do if it had to deal with this situation? Because it always has a way of creating its ecosystem balance. So now you have companies that are taking into consideration in the feed, the protein and what it tastes like, the texture of it, the nutrition of it, oil content, of course, which we know is just, it's just bathing ourselves in our central nervous system and our brains in beautiful omega-3 fatty acids.
Amen.
So with all that going on, I'd like to hear your input on healthy eating, seafood, and seafood choices.
Yeah, well, I think, when it comes to healthful eating, seafood by miles is, one of the best things that you can do for yourself. The challenge has been, to your point, you look at seafood consumption with a growing population, and the historic methods of simple harvesting have really gotten way out of control. It's just like, the way trawl fishing works is just so decimating to everything, bycatch species, the environment itself, just just the fossil fuel usage to field, it's just, if you want to see an engine that doesn't run efficiently on any kind of fuel, look at any gigantic boat. So it's just, so I just, all of those things really used to kind of flummox me, because it seemed like the insurmountable answer. And I went through the same journey that you did. It's that whole notion of the original, the first forays into aquaculture. It immediately made sense, because you're like, wow, you can definitely farm fish.
There's a lot of ocean out there,
Yeah, but just like anything else, it's like, the very best plants in nature come from, organic soil that's alive and vibrant, right, with all of the nematodes and
there's a war going on.
Stuff that lives like below the earth, right? So our first forays into super conventional agriculture, the outcomes were not delicious, so then you look at the environmental degradation, and everybody learns from the push me pull you of it. And it's just, to me, it's pleasing to see the amount of innovation and devotion from, some of the better operators to really solve some. It's like, we want to be able to provide high quality protein, but we realize garbage in, garbage out. So we can't just indiscriminately feed. We can't just decimate the sardine fishery so that we can have fish food, So how do we really analyze and make sure that we're creating, feed sources that get the fish everything that they need, but also provide the types of nutrients that equal, really dense flesh and good fat content, high omega-3s. And how do we farm in ways where we have circulating water or open ocean, whatever it might be? It's really impressive. Some of what I've seen happen just over the last less than a decade, right? So to me, I have a lot of hope for the industry, because more people should be eating a lot more fish than they do. People should be eating a lot less red meat, and the red meat they eat should be more pasture based, right? For a lot of the same reasons, and you can't achieve that balance of getting the right protein into your diet from diverse sources if you don't have really smart people thinking about the technological implications of feeding, over 3 billion people.
Yeah, that's always been the challenge. And, obviously food insecurity is in your heart and soul. I mean, it's undeniable. We just spent the last 50 minutes talking about it, and, Forever Oceans is a great company. It's 13 years of research behind the final unveiling of their first seafood product that they're going to come out with, and it's Kahala. Kahala is the amberjack.
Nice.
Farm raised in Hawaii. circulating tanks when they're creating the brood, and it goes out into the ocean at the right time. It's robotically fed, so it's not a lot of, it's all really computerized.
Yeah, that's awesome.
They're making sure the density, there's no stress level, very little chance that you're going to ever have to use any kind of medicine or,
Well, and no food waste. It's like that, the whole slurry of, just like,
oh yeah, just fill the ocean, let it go to the bottom, and turn into
dumping
mud.
food into yeah, crazy, right?
But I mean,
some of those feed technology, it's so impressive, man. It's such good stuff. Yeah.
I'm going to make sure that we get you a couple before it gets to market. I'm going to get you a couple of whole fish, some kahala.
Awesome.
I'm going to tell you, I had the opportunity of doing a cutting and a little bit of marketing with the fish, and they're gorgeous. You get your knife into there and you're just like, you're cutting through some quality, and you look at your knife and it's like it's got a coating of fat on it, which to me is exciting. When I used to go to the Fulton Fish Market and these guys were cutting swordfish with these gigantic sabers, sawing through the swordfish. It's cold morning. They pull that knife out, and if it's coated, it looks like white wax. Piece of swordfish, because you knew. And so that's what's coming out. That's what the kahala is all about. But subsequently, they're going to come out with a farmed grouper, which is interesting, a farmed red snapper, and I'm really have a high level of confidence that they're going to do it right, because 13 years is a long time to be doing research, to open up.
Well, yeah. And, the interesting thing is, it's like, if you can get it right with amberjack, because there's a fish that's super susceptible to parasites. Wild grown amberjack, you have to be careful what size you get, as so exactly. So I just I see so much hope in that. It's so funny because you mentioned this. It's like the food insecurity piece. There was the late mayor of Boston's name is Tom Menino, and he did this thing called Boston Bounty Bucks, which was based program. He started them back in the 80s, where they used to provide them for people that were on WIC benefits.
Yeah.
And when Gus, my late partner, made it possible, so it wasn't, when we started doubling food stamps for fruits and vegetables, it was illegal. Gus made it unso. He helped us.
Good to have a friend in politics.
Yeah, he's really amazing. But when it's so funny, because when that happened, Tom Menino, because he read this article about how people struggling with food insecurity were also very protein deficient. And he's like, we're Boston, we have all these great fishermen. So he decided to use bounty bucks. So in Boston to this day, you can double your food stamps when you buy fish at the Boston, Massachusetts greater area farmers markets. I think there are like 24 farmers markets.
That's awesome.
So you can double your food stamps for fruits, vegetables, and fish in Boston.
And you instigated that?
Well, no, we didn't instigate the fish. That was all Tom Menino. We were all about the fruits and vegetables, but I'm like, fish, what a good idea.
Brilliant. And I contemplate our globe. I think about the surface and what it's covered with. 75% or more, I don't know the exact percentage, of water. It's connecting every body of land, and every person living on that body of land is connected by the ocean, and it's really our commonality, as a globe, as a world, and the importance of what comes out of it, and how we maintain it, and how we continue to work in symbiosis with it to produce solutions that we're both deeply involved in our world. And everything I do is, it's that standard in my head that I judge things against, quite like yourself. So I mean, COVID's been a hard time, but it's been a time for the environment to take a little breath of fresh air and recoup. There's live dolphins in the canals of Venice, and there's fields that are now fallow that wouldn't be originally, and that's so healthy for the soil. I see it as a little break, from it all.
But, it makes a very, very important statement, and that's that if you give nature a chance, and it doesn't take long. You give nature a chance, it will absolutely, she will restore herself. It's just like, you just got to give her a break. It's like when you started that whole, give swordfish a break campaign.
That's right.
Back in the 90s, it's like, remarkable how rapidly nature can recover. So when you look at the importance of aquaculture, it's really how do we utilize the resources of water, technology, it's stuff like that, so that we're not, and I hate to say it this way, so
Go ahead.
podcast is we got to stop pissing in the pool.
That's
it's
fine.
you know
Yeah.
and that's I think that's it's the hope with aquaculture. I think a lot of the no-till farming, land agriculture now, it's just
Yeah.
where technology and forward thinking is finally catching up, and some of the brighter minds in business, listen, if it's not financially viable, it's not sustainable.
No, it's not
Right.
correct.
And so just our better business minds are starting to really put some muscle and some finance behind it, and they're coming up with solutions that make sense and allow people to eat sustainable proteins in a way that's delicious, because if it sucks, nobody's going to eat it either. So it's
Right.
you got to figure it all out, man. So it's worth supporting.
You're the man. You're the man. Listen, I've taken up an hour of your time, and that's what I promised I would, and not take up two, because it's so easy to, and we have to get together. I want to thank all of our listeners and remind them that, we have a series of podcasts with the original gangsters, Jacques Pepin came up today, future ones like Drew Perrant, you'll be hearing about in the future. And I've got an amazing roster, and you're amongst the greats, Michel.
Yeah, awesome.
Because you are great, and we thank you for that. I thank you for that, and I think I speak for a collective when we all say thank you. So I look forward to seeing you again and giving you an actual hug, my friend. I love you with all my heart.
Yeah,
Thank
love
you
you
so
too,
much,
brother. Miss you, man. Talk to you soon.
All right,
Thanks.
take care.